Wessex, England, late autumn 871 AD. Smoke rises from burned fields. Viking longships still haunt the rivers. For 6 months the raids have come, wave after wave, stealing cattle, torching granaries, cutting supply lines. Nothing fresh grows. Livestock vanishes overnight. Yet step inside a fortified burh. On the table, thick barley pottage steaming in a single cauldron, purple carrots and turnips pulled from earth clamps, a loaf of dark bread, a jug of ale, and a small jar of honey. This community has lost its herds, its harvest, its peace, yet their bones tell a different story. As well-nourished as anyone in untouched Europe, not one lucky meal, a system. One that began months before the first dragon ship appeared and fed them through every hour of the siege. This is how the Anglo-Saxons turned their farming calendar into resistance, their storehouses into fortresses, and defeated the kind of prolonged disruption that should have broken them, and a detail in their teeth is still puzzling researchers. Late winter. Walk into the food stores beneath the ramparts of one of Alfred's burhs. Torchlight cuts across wooden barrels, sacks of grain, roots stacked against the wall, smoked pork hanging from the beams. You're counting, not out of curiosity, because your family's survival and the kingdom's defense depend on the answer. How many weeks of food remain? How many mouths still need feeding? And when will the next raid hit? Not until spring, maybe longer. 3 more months of burned fields, stolen animals, and rivers too dangerous to fish. For a household of 20 or an entire garrison, this is not a seasonal inconvenience. It is a 6-month war of attrition, and you're standing in the middle of it, looking at what's left. Now, compare that to the Viking raiders themselves, or to later medieval Europe. The Norse expected quick plunder. When it turned into months of fighting, their supply lines stretched and failed. The Great Famine of 1315 to 1317 later killed millions across warmer lands with longer growing seasons. The Anglo-Saxons faced repeated campaigns, especially the Great Heathen Army from 865 onward, and they made it work. The science backs this up. Stable isotope analysis of hundreds of early medieval English skeletons, including recent studies from Cambridge and Edinburgh, reveals something remarkable. Bone collagen from kings, nobles, and commoners shows almost identical diets, heavy on barley, peas, beans, and vegetables, with only moderate animal protein. No elite class gorging on meat while peasants starved. This uniformity meant the entire society was shockingly resilient. When Vikings stole cattle, there was no fragile upper class that suddenly collapsed. Everyone was already living on the same sturdy foundation. That storehouse you're standing in wasn't half empty by accident. Every sack of grain, every clamp of roots, every strip of pork was calculated months in advance. The Anglo-Saxons ran a raid-aware food production calendar. What to preserve, how much to store, which animals to prioritize, all settled before the first longship was sighted. Nothing improvised, nothing left to chance. Before they were warriors or kings, they were farmers and food strategists. And the system they built to feed their people through half a year of Viking chaos was arguably their quietest, most effective weapon. The Anglo-Saxon survival system began with the harshest calculation a community under threat could make. In late summer, before the raiding season, lords collected the feorm, obligatory food tributes of grain, cheese, ale, and honey from every village. These weren't just taxes, they were strategic reserves, moved to fortified burhs that Alfred the Great expanded into a national network. When Vikings burned the open fields, the burhs became lifeboats, stocked with pre-collected supplies. The single most important food in daily life was barley pottage, called brew, a thick one-pot stew of barley, peas, beans, and whatever vegetables survived. It provided slow-release energy without blood sugar crashes, portable on campaigns, easy to digest under stress, and cheap enough that warriors and farmers alike could fight or flee for days while fields still smoldered.
Pigs were the secret recovery weapon. Unlike slow-breeding cattle or sheep, pigs matured in months and produced huge litters. They foraged in woodlands on pannage, acorns and beech mast, requiring almost no extra feed. After a raid wiped out the herd, a handful of surviving sows could repopulate protein sources in a single season. A deliberate agricultural strategy that let communities bounce back faster than their enemies expected.
Everyday vegetables doubled as medicine. Onions, garlic, leeks, cabbage, and plantain weren't just flavor, they went into daily pottages and wound salves. Ball's Leech Book, written around 900 to 950 AD, records recipes using these exact ingredients. One famous eye salve mixed garlic, onion or leek, wine, and ox bile, then steeped it 9 days in a brass vessel. In 2015, University of Nottingham microbiologists recreated it and proved it destroys antibiotic-resistant MRSA biofilms, killing up to 90% of the bacteria in actual wound models. During raids, sword cuts and infections were constant. These common garden plants gave ordinary people a hidden layer of protection no raider could burn away. Ale wasn't just a drink, it was safe, calorie-dense hydration. Fermented barley ale killed waterborne pathogens, delivered B vitamins, and was far safer than polluted rivers after raids contaminated wells. Children drank it diluted. In a world without clean water infrastructure, this was daily survival technology. And honey was the original multi-toolkit. Never spoiled, it acted as a natural antibiotic for wounds, preserved other foods, and became mead. A single jar was portable, high-calorie insurance that also healed the injured, something the Vikings, with less emphasis on large-scale beekeeping in Britain, struggled to match on campaign. The one-pot pottage culture allowed instant adaptation. Whatever grain, legumes, foraged nettles, plantain or roots remained went into the cauldron. No complex kitchens required. Everyone could improvise nutrition from almost nothing. When Vikings seized livestock, communities simply shifted the recipe to stored staples and wild greens. By the time spring arrived, the burhs were still standing. The Anglo-Saxons had endured 6 months of disruption that should have starved them out. Their bones show no widespread malnutrition. Their teeth tell another story. Extreme wear from stone-ground flour and acidic fermented foods, but surprisingly few cavities because sugar was almost non-existent. The diet wore them down, but didn't rot them from within. Look at that table one more time. The barley pottage was grown in fields the Vikings tried to burn. The roots came from earth clamps hidden from raiders. The honey came from hives tended through generations of conflict. 6 months of planning, tribute collection, preservation, and quiet ingenuity to feed resistance through half a year of war. The Anglo-Saxons built a complete nutritional system that addressed exactly the kind of prolonged, disruptive warfare the Vikings brought. Storable, medicinal, adaptable, and never overly dependent on vulnerable livestock. Modern science has only just caught up. Isotope graphs, leech book lab tests, nutritional breakdowns. Every health food store now sells fermented foods and plant-based endurance meals their grandparents would recognize. The marketing came later, but the working knowledge of how to keep a kingdom alive through 6 months of Viking raids was already there 1,000 years ago in a simple burh storehouse that most of the world would never hear about. If the hidden engineering behind how people actually survived is what brings you to this channel, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what comes next. This was Magnus, and I'll see you soon.